Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. As usual, coming late to you on a Tuesday. Now, I do want to get into the more high-quality edited videos. They're coming. Just wanted to, again, offer the excuse of I have been extremely sick again for this past week. As you may know from last week, I have to cough. That's actually for dramatic purposes there. See, cough, cough, I'm sick. I still have just been plagued with this nasty, whatever it is, sinus infection, whatever. I'm never, ever going to speak badly about people who have migraines ever again. I'm one of those that have never really experienced a lot of headaches or migraines. Just has never been afflicted with them. And this past couple weeks, with the dizziness, unable to focus on the computer screen, the migraines when I do, or just pain after I look at the computer screen for long, has just been too much to really keep up with the videos. So I apologize to everyone. I know I have some Patreon videos due, and have been out of my usual rhythm. I mean, usually summers are not as productive as I'd like them to be, because I prefer to be out doing things in the summer rather than behind a computer screen. But this has just been a very, very rough month. But I will get those edited videos once I can start focusing and actually sit behind a computer screen for any, good duration of time. All right, so this week, though, I am going to be focusing on Commander for the Market Monday. But this one is going to be talking more on what I like to call safe havens, or safe haven investments, which basically means something where you can park your money that you can feel okay that it will either maintain or slightly go up throughout a given period of time. And the period of time that I have set for these cards is going to be about a year. And the reason why I've chosen these is none of these cards were printed in the recent 2017 Commander print run. And they all see a lot of play, or they haven't been printed in a while, with some exceptions. And I really think that some people that I'm a risky investor. I'm a penny stocks investor. I'm a get ahead of the curve type person. And there's a lot of volatility. I've been burned in the past by some of my investments, was burned by two of my investments this time around because they got reprinted when I thought there was no way in hell that Harbinger of the Tides or Zendikar Resurgence were going to get reprinted this soon. I thought they'd spike up in value before they'd get a reprint. However, both were included in this Commander 2017, and both are going to be, cut in half, making me lose my initial investments on those cards. And it's going to be a while before I'll see any sort of profit on them. I do still like both Zendikar Resurgence and the good old Merfolk, because they are played. Zendikar Resurgence is played in a lot of Commander decks. I think it was almost over 10,000 decks at this point. And the Harbinger of the Tides is a 3 to 4 of in the very, very popular and kind of steady popular modern deck. But again, it's one of these things. This when you live by the sword, you die by the sword type thing. When you invest in more volatile investments, oftentimes they don't pan out. Well, these ones that I'm going to have for you today are more of these safe haven investments for more of the traders that want to make sure, people that are trying to maintain the value of their collection. So say you have a lot of cards that you are weary are very volatile. You can put them into these particular cards and have a lot of trade value, because these are cards that people want. There's huge demand behind these cards. There's also a lot of supply in, I think everything on this list has been reprinted. Yeah, or nope, there's two cards on my list that have never seen a reprint, but even if they do get a reprint, I think are quite stable in the long term. So again, the whole theory behind safe havens is to trade into these cards where they will hold their value for at least a year and most likely go up. And all of these on my list, I think, will actually go up. And if they do happen to hit the Iconic Masters or some of these other sets that are going to be released, I don't think they will kill the price of these, because, like I said, they have been reprinted and still have huge demand. And I don't think that it will be the straw that breaks the camel's back, like many other of the more volatile or more scarce cards that are going up in value at this point. So let me talk about why I don't like the reserve list investments. I think that actually reserve list cards are very, 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 very volatile. Here is why. I think that we're in a bubble with reserve list cards. I think a lot of people are kind of investing them with the mentality that these are going to be a long-term invest. I think they're parking their money in this sort of safe haven philosophy in reserve list cards, thinking that, 4, 5, 10 years down the road, they're still going to be worth the exact same they are now. And if they do hit, they're going to hit big, which we've seen with a lot of the reserve list cards in the past. But I think that reserve list cards have become a very self-fulfilling prophecy. I think that the hype around them, with a ton of people buying into particular reserve list cards, that it's mainly speculators that have caused kind of the price increase of these cards. And a lot of these cards are not deserving. The demand is just not there. The supply is simply running out just due to the amount of investors in the reserve list space. So I am trying to direct all of my viewers or listeners, whatever you want to call you, in the Market Monday community, kind of steer you away from more of the volatile reserve list cards, as we never know if we're going to get a bombshell of an announcement saying the reserve list is going to be eradicated, or legacy, there will be a new eternal format going back to legacy times that does not have the reserve list, or some of the reserve list cards start getting banned in Commander due to the philosophy of Commander. If you go back and read the philosophy of Commander, one of the things they have is things that kind of bar the entry to play. So they ban cards like Library of Alexandria or Library of Alexander, is that what it is? Anyway, just because of how costly it is, or the Moxes. They're not necessarily they're overpowered in Commander, but they have such a steep price tag that since you're in a multiplayer, communal group, they don't want huge discrepancies in price to dictate. They don't want like a pay-to-win type format. Or they want to mitigate that as much as possible. So for those reasons, I think there's actually a lot of volatility in the reserve list. And I think the community is actually starting to want to go away from that. And you never know what sort of reaction that's going to have. But long term, it just doesn't seem very sustainable to me. Couple that with the fact that Wizards has broken their own reserve list policy in the past in the form of Judge Foils or from the vaults. And it's something that I think has way too much volatility for my blood. And I think there's just better safe havens. So with that explanation out of the way, now that we're 7 minutes into the video, let the actual video begin. So for this video, I'm going to pick one card from each color in the Commander realm, which I think is extremely stable right now, which is my safe haven pick, that I think that you have a good year until the spoilers start coming out for the Commander 2018s, whether you want to get out of these or not. And if we still see the same year-to-year growth of Commander, even if they reprint them in 2018, maybe the price won't even go down. So that's what we're starting to see. Commander has just surpassed all the other formats in the amount of growth. It is by far the most popular format at my local game store. It seems very popular even at Grand Prix. If you wanted to get in one of those little 4-man pod commanders, they fired almost immediately at the last Grand Prix that I was at. And it just seems to be a lot of people have kind of picked up. One of the things I like about Commander 2 is usually when a deck is built, it isn't deconstructed. It's just added to the collection. I have a few players at my local game store that have, more than a few players. I'd even say the average Commander player at my store has like 5 or 6 Commander decks, and we have people with 20, 30, 40 Commander decks, and they don't rip apart their Commander decks when they're bored of them. They rotate through them. Whereas a lot of my modern players, a lot of my standard players, they go through decks and then will sell off decks to build other decks. And it is Commanders don't fall out of the meta like they do in modern or standard or even legacy. It's something that's going to stick around forever. People get kind of, nostalgic towards certain cards, or that's not the right word I'm looking for. They have some sort of affinity towards their commander and stick with it. So anyway, for those reasons, I think that Commander still is a great money sink in these high demand cards to at least know that your value of your collection is going to stay. It's gonna be there in a year, if not has increased. So anywho, let's get into this. So for white, I'm going to pick Sun Titan, and the reason being for Sun Titan is that you can see that it's run in 25,000 decks, and none of those decks that hit the top list here on top commanders are either Brea or Atraxa. So you can see that Sun Titan actually has a lot more demand than what EDH Rec has to say here, because we have some inflated statistics based upon those two cards. Atraxa and, well, I would say Atraxa, Marin, Oloro, and Brea just have so much more listings out there than the rest of the commanders. If they're in those particular decks, they're going to be a hit card. Sun Titan doesn't make those lists. You can see it's in Oloro in a portion of Oloro decks, but not in Brea or Atraxa, at least on these top commanders that it's played in. What I really like about Sun Titan is it seems like it's the perfect card in Commander. It's the 6 mana sweet spot. It has a very, very powerful ability. It can get out of hand. It's never really bad because you can always get back a fetch land or just like an artifact that you've cracked or something that's been destroyed. And very, very powerful, fair. It's accessible right now to new players, so when they're looking for a powerful card in this slot, a $4 price tag is not going to deter them, and this demand will start outstretching supply, and if not, it's going to maintain it, and it's very easy to trade off. I sell these, probably Sun Titan is the card at my local game store that I've sold the most of, if not, I mean, it's close to, easily top 10 out of cards that I've sold, you know, through buying and selling card collections and stuff like that. We constantly run out of Sun Titans and have to restock our Sun Titans. So if we look at a price trajectory here for Sun Titan, you can see that it is almost at its all-time low from its last printing in Archenemy Nicol Bolas. Yes, there are a lot of these out there. Maybe these will start entering the supply chain, but I think that this is the low. I think this is a great time to sink it into Sun Titan, and it will probably go up to what Commander 15 hit after its reprint. So you can see it got its high around, I would say, 450-ish. So after it was reprinted, it went from down to $1.75 up to $4.50. So I think that, of course, now with another reprinting, the gain isn't that great. We're going to see from a 3 to 4, probably to a 4, back to about a 4.50, maybe 5 by this time next year. And that'll be a great time to trade it off if you suspect it's going to be reprinted in the next Commander or another set that's coming out. Iconic Masters, it might have a little bit of risk there, or even 25. The set that's coming out after that, the Masters 25, the Titans are probably all very, very likely to be in those sets. So just that's some food for thought. The rest of the excuse me, the rest of the cards on this list that I have are a lot less likely to be printed in either Iconic or the Masters 25. In fact, when we get to green and even black, I'm going to talk. There are some cards that I would normally pick here, but I do think that they are going to be included. I think there's a 0% chance that they aren't included in either Iconic or the 25. Sun Titan, however, I think is just too good of a card that I don't think either one of those will really affect the price tag too much. All right, so on to blue. Blue is the biggest duck card ever. The only real risk you have with Cyclonic Rift is it could be banned in Commander. I know a lot of people, myself included, I actually don't care either way. I rarely see a game where someone that just doesn't cast Cyclonic Rift in the wrong way. Like, I have a lot of players at my store that just they burn Cyclonic Rift when they don't need to, or cast it at sorcery speed, or just something that a more experienced player would not do. But usually when there's a resolved Cyclonic Rift, it's game over for the player that casts it. So it's pretty backbreaking. It's pretty one-sided, and cards like this have been banned in the Commander. I'm trying to think of is it Upheaval? Just because it feels a lot like Upheaval, because Upheaval you can just float a bunch of mana and then cast a bunch of cards back, and then everyone else gets their boards completely wiped. Whereas you have a board state. Cyclonic Rift kind of feels the same way. It might just be too powerful for Commander. But since it is a multiplayered format, a lot of times people can recover. It then becomes a 3 versus 1 against the person that casts Cyclonic Rift. So maybe they'll keep it in. It is in an insane amount of decks. I believe it's in like 71% of all blue decks, which is just crazy amount of play this card gets. And it is very, very low at the moment. You can see that the Card Kingdom, which has all the prices by EDH Rec, has already bumped up the Modern Masters edition to $6.50. And wow, in the past, actually since I looked at it last, it's actually jumped $1. So Cyclonic Crypt is a great place to kind of sink your money in. It's proven itself in Commander. It only does see play really in Commander, a little bit of Tron list, but it is powerful enough for Modern to be a breakout card sometime in the future if mid-range ever comes back. It's a 7 mana, again, kind of board wipe. If we ever see more blue Tron base lists, that actually will start affect the demand as well. So back to EDH Rec, this card is just seen play in so many different decks. It is on the Atraxa, Allura, Brea, but you can see that it doesn't really synergize with any of these commanders, but it's just so powerful that you might as well put it in. I mean, basically every blue deck that I've ever created has had a Rhystic Study and a Cyclonic Rift in it, just because they're so good in Commander. It's just a one-size-fits-all control card, panic card, anything card. There's never been a game where I've actually looked at a Cyclonic Rift and like, I wish this wasn't in my hand. It's always been very, very powerful. All right, so on to Black. Black is one of those that I might have picked another card. I liked Phyrexian Arena. There was another card too, but I really think that those are going to be reprinted. And Ghast is just a difficult card to reprint. The last time it has been reprinted was in the Commander 2015. I believe this one was in the Daxos deck. No. This was in the Mono Black deck for the Commander. Yeah, that's what it was. So it's been a while since this card has been printed. It's in 13,000 decks, and I think this is actually quite low for Commander. I think that more players should be playing this in their Black deck, as it is a very, very powerful ramp card. The Extort is also nice, but it also combos greatly with the Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth and the Cobble Coffers. Me, personally, it's hard for me to build a Black deck without just throwing in a Ghast, because, of course, it's that powerful. Yeah, I think I do have a Ghast in every Black deck I've ever built, and we're even talking about 4-color decks. I even throw this Ghast in because it's quite easy to go get the Cobble Coffers, Urborg Tomb Yawgmoth combo, and it just makes Ghast go crazy at that point. You get like Hour of Promise that helps fetch out that type of combo if you're in a black-green, or any other deck that uses a black-green combination. And so you can see as well that Card Kingdom has already adjusted its price, even though the real demand is much lower. So that's a good indication when Star City Games and Card Kingdom and a few other of these bigger stores, Card Kingdom is really making a run. I'd like to see their statistics, but they have sponsored basically every YouTuber that's not exiled from the community, with a sponsorship. They're really starting to get their name out there, and if they're selling a lot of these and they're adjusting their prices accordingly, then that means there's probably a lot of demand in the casual. I mean, I think that's who Card Kingdom is really. Do they sponsor a pro team? I don't know. Someone correct me if they have one of the sponsorships for the pro team, but they sponsored a lot of the more casual names in the communities. The Magic Man Sams, the Tulane Community Colleges, those type of people have been picked up. EDH Rec itself has been picked up as a Card Kingdom member. And so let's just look at their buy list too. And they're paying $1.75, so 75 cents below market price for the Ghast. So that's a really, really good sign for Ghast. Again, this is a harder card to reprint based upon the Extort mechanic. It doesn't just fit in any old. Usually, like Mero has said, if they print a card in a set, they want to have like what, 5 or is it 10 versions of that mechanic before it's worthy of reprint. I think that's why it didn't get reprinted in Modern Masters 3. Just there wasn't enough room to throw Extort in it. So I really, really like Ghast over something like Phyrexian Arena. Black Market would have been a pick if it wouldn't have been reprinted in this latest Commander set. But let's just check out Black cards right now that are eligible. And so we go over here to Black, and a lot of these you can see have been reprinted in the Demonic Tutor probably will get a reprint. Phyrexian Arena, I think is definitely on the short list for one of those iconic 25 box set type things coming out in the next year. We'll get a reprint. Sidisi's interesting here as one, or Dictate of Erebos. I just went for the little less expensive card, and it has about the same play rate as those two, and I think that actually this card gets better and better and better the more cards get printed. Whereas both Sidisi and Dictate, I think you can print something that can actually compete with these slots. Maybe, maybe not. But this, I think, is a very, very reasonable safe haven to throw your money in. and it will increase in value. I would not be surprised if it actually doubles in value in the next year, as it might be the time that Gate crashed, that the ones that didn't get reprinted in Modern Masters, the supply starts to outstretch the demand, or the demand starts to outstretch the supply, and we start to see a lot of gain in these cards. Keep in mind, there is still a lot of Gate crash product out there. That if cards ever do hit a certain price tag, if the set becomes profitable to open, those will start to be opened. But yeah, I don't see that happening. So Crypt Ghast, I think, is a great safe haven. Let's go on to the red. Red, I went for a more juicy pick, which is Purphoros, God of the Forge. I like Purphoros because it synergized with so many cards. Yes, I've heard rumors of this card being too good for Commander, that it's on like a Commander watch list as a offensive card, something that could be banned. But there's ways to deal with it. Usually if someone casts a Purphoros, someone needs to take care of it immediately. It doesn't just win the game outright by itself. It does take some work. You can see that it's run in almost 11,000 decks, and that's going to skyrocket because I think it's a great card in the new Vampire Tribal. A lot of the Tribal decks, I think, work well with it as they get the ETB effect off of the Purphoros. It also has the fire-breathing effect, which works perfectly for the main commander out of the Vampires. And when people start actually building it less of a Vampire Tribal and more of a tokens-based strategy, I don't know. I think the Purphoros does fit nice in that. But all of these cards on this list, I didn't talk about this in the preface of this video, aren't based upon the commander decks coming out. I'm going to have videos throughout the next week, probably top 5 or top 10. I'm going to try to pick out every commander possible, all the combinations that you can do, and all the cards that work well. There's some juicy ones, by the way. So last week was on, Marsil? The Artifact Dragon is very interesting, and the other vampire that casts spells from your graveyard is also extremely interesting. So we'll look over them, and I'm going to do full dedicated videos for each one of those. So the cards on this list were basically, I think, just one-size-fits-all type cards, great safe havens, didn't have any relevance toward the commanders coming out. That is why they're not necessarily spec cards. They are just safe cards to sink some money into. So Purphoros is the best red card to do so. Again, it just gets better and better. I don't think it's reprintable. The legendary enchantment creature makes it hard. Iconic, maybe. 25, probably. But if we see it as a mythic again in 25, will it be enough to decrease the price? I don't think so. If you actually look at the trajectory of Purphoros, you can see that this card has just gone insane in the past, since Amonkhet has had a great increase. And I think this is because the supply is finally outstretched the demand. You can see that this was just kind of a slow gain here for years after rotation. And now it's up to $15. In fact, I think that Purphoros is going to start to outpace Thoughtseize in the next few months, and will overtake Thoughtseize as the most expensive card out of the Theros, and probably in that entire block. And same thing with the foil price. The foil price for Thoughtseize, of course, has all of that modern, but a lot of people even prefer a regular out of the old artwork out of Lorwyn, or whenever it was printed. Can't remember exactly where Thoughtseize was printed, over just even a foil Thoughtseize out of Ravnica. Plus, I think Thoughtseize is pretty easy to reprint in some of these sort of master editions. We could definitely see an Iconic or Iconics or 25. However, I think that between the two of them, it probably will get a reprint as well, and will be at the rare instead of in the mythic slot. And Purphoros, I think, will always, when it gets reprinted, be in the mythic slot. All right, on to the green. Green was pretty tough to pick a card. I picked Avenger of Zendikar here because it's had a great trajectory, and you can see too the card Kingdom price is a lot higher than the market value of the Avenger of Zendikar. This card, I think, is still just a very classic in Commander. When Commander first came out, Avenger of Zendikar was, I think, one of the most played cards, if not the most played finisher for green, as it just was able to, very, very popular with competitive and casual players. Timmy's, Johnny's, and Spikes like this card, and those sort of demographics actually do play a role in Commander, and this just fits in a variety of decks. Green likes to ramp. If you actually look over EDH Rec, the most played cards out of green are always going to be ramp cards. In fact, it seems like green is the support color, and Avenger of Zendikar, it can even be thrown in 4 and 5 color decks because they're using primarily green sources to then use cards like Cultivate Kodama's Reaches, and it's just a good finisher in those type of decks. So you can look at green. There are a lot of these cards. Eternal Witness would be another pretty decent sync, but it just did have a reprint, and I think will be in this card needs to be reprinted ever so often. I think it will be, and you never know when the Eternal Witness is just going to be which will be the straw that breaks the camel's back of the Eternal Witness. Maybe there won't be one, but I think it's going to be around this $5 mark forever. Like every time it gets above this, they're just going to reprint it and reprint it and reprint it and reprint it. And so therefore I don't like Eternal Witness as that safe haven. It's more volatile than I think Avenger of Zendikar. And if you look through this too, the other played cards are all commons and uncommons with price tags that aren't very appealing. The card that I would sink money into if I didn't think it was going to be both in Iconic and in 25 is Birds of Paradise, unless they have kind of the same theory they had with Modern Masters 2015 and 2017, that they didn't reprint any card that was printed in the previous one. So there is no card in Modern Masters 2. I think there was 1 or 2 exceptions, but out of Modern Masters 2 that was also in Modern Masters 3. Oh, Tarmogoyf was one exception. Was there one other? Can't remember if there's one other, but that's why we didn't see like a lot of the cards that we saw out of Modern Masters 2015 that we thought needed a reprint again. And then they just didn't. They skipped over them. They gave them a break, and so you might see that with Iconic versus 25 with Birds of Paradise. But I think this card will be reprinted in one of them. So Birds of Paradise isn't. I think it's a lot more volatile than Avenger of Zendikar in the near future. If you look down through here, there just isn't anything else that is very interesting. You start getting down to almost a 10 percentile, which I wouldn't call a safe haven. Scavenging Ooze would be my other pick for this, but you can see that it's just had too many reprintings lately that I don't know. Scavenging Ooze would be a close second for sure, but I think that Avenger of Zendikar is going to have a better 1 year trajectory than I would say for the Ooze. Yeah, it's had a great trajectory since it was reprinted in this dual deck, and hasn't had another reprinting besides the Commander 13. I think this one's starting to look good in the past since A3 Volt gone from $4.30 to $5.50. See, this is a reason why I love Commander cards. None of these ever get on the movers and shakers for like MTG Goldfish or MTG Price. And this, 1 cent here, 2 cent here, 5 cents here. And pretty soon, we all know A3 Volt, that just barely came out. And it's increased $1 since then. I mean, what kind of modern card has really done that? I mean, yeah, of course there is some. But it's these other radar cards I just love. They're a lot more stable in value. All right, then we're going to go on to the artifact. The artifact I chose for this one is Chromatic Lantern. I was very surprised that this wasn't reprinted. And I think that this makes it even a more juicy spec because I think every Dragon deck is going to want to pick these up. It has a pretty good trajectory here. It came out at 450 and has already doubled up. So where's the sky is the limit with this card. I think we could actually see another double up, but if not, in the most conservative trajectory as possible, it's going to go probably to 12 in the next year. I don't see this not going to 12 or 13. And we'll have to look back at this in a year and see how we predicted it. 15 is definitely where I would see the normal, and 20 I would not be surprised if this had another double up. You can see back in the old Return to Ravnica, it got all the way up. Nope, it is at its highest right now. So the last reprint did not even put a dent in the Chromatic Lantern. I mean, it did fall and then immediately shot back up. And the Dragon deck is probably just going to completely obliterate this. And let's say that another one of my suspicions is that either in 25 or Iconic, the slivers are going to play a big theme in that. And Sliver Overlord will get a reprint. Queen is on the reserve list, but Overlord is fair game. And if it does, we'll see a lot of people getting into that for Commander. And then Chromatic Lantern, of course, is going to be in the Sliver-based decks. I think a lot of these new players just don't know what Slivers are. And once they're introduced to them, we're going to have the same Sliver craze. When Commander was first started, Slivers were one of the most popular, if not the most popular tribal. They've fallen out of favor in more recent years just because I think that, again, the newer players just don't even know what they are. And once they get introduced, then they'll go crazy, and Chromatic Lantern will go in every one of those. It's just, this card is just too juicy of a card that to have this, like, there's no volatility at all. Even if this gets reprinted, how many times can they reprint this card? And it's just proven itself as a staple in Commander in a whopping 38,000 decks. That is a very, once you get into the above the 25,000, this is a very, very juicy card. And at a rarity of a rare, yeah, that's even, I thought about Sad Robot here because I think they have very, very similar. I think Sad Robot's around the 38,000, Solemn Simulacrum. But I think that it was gaining a lot from the Brea. Whereas, yes, Brea did impact the Chromatic Lantern. But you can see that this card is a lot more versatile, I think. I mean, Sad Robot can be just thrown in any deck, but there's, yeah, maybe they're quite comparable. So I wouldn't mind Solemn Simulacrum. This one just seems more juicy to me. All right, so on to the multicolored. Multicolored is going to be not found. It's Anguished Unmaking. Anguished Unmaking, I think that it has hit its bottom. And let's see if we can find it here. So, whoop, sorry about that mic. Just knocked my mic over. Hopefully that didn't make a huge sound. Anguished Unmaking is a card that 12,000 in a recent set is crazy. This card has a lot of even more room to grow because I think that the Edgar Markov decks and all the other vampire ones are going to want this card. Any other white, this is going to be a staple. It's going to be the Cyclonic Rift in the white-black deck, as it answers everything. The lose 3 life in Commander is nothing. It's, you know, it's like lose 1.5 life in Standard, or 1 versus 1. Especially in the color that likes to gain life. Most of the decks that you run this, you have some sort of life gain in it, and you can see that yes, Atraxa and the Brea and Deloro. We're having a lot of pressure on this card, and that's why it sees so many copies. But we do have a vampire deck that's going to want it. It hasn't seen a reprint in the Commander decks. I think that in a year it might have a reprint, but doubtful. So I think this is a quick double up in the next year, and then, you know, trade it off, sell it off at that point, and then go into another card that misses a reprint in the Commander 2018. This card has a trajectory that is going down, but I think this is an error because I think that the vast majority, well, let's just look at the trajectory here, because I think that right here is most of this was Commander. That was because Anguished Unmaking had a time when it had no one was playing it, not even sideboards. And I think this little bump here was because it started to see some play in like the Mardu vehicles or in the white-black tokens type lists. But if we actually click on these Mardu vehicles, Anguished Unmaking is 12 in a sideboard. So how much of this is actually going to enter the market because Standard players are selling off after rotation? That's the question. And my answer is probably not that much. And I think this is probably the trajectory. So I think that we're right where it should be without this little bump that it got from starting to see a little bit of Standard sideboard or a little bit of anticipation that it was going to see more Standard play, and then never did. And so if we look at $2.30, yeah, $2.40 is probably where we think its low is going to be. And again, I think this is going to recover soon. Yes, we'll see a little bit of rotation sell-off, but where, though? I mean, where was this seeing play in Standard that's going to have this huge impact on the supply when Standard players get out of it? That's the question. I don't think there's much. All right, so I think it's a safe place. I mean, that's a phenomenal amount of decks that it's played in for this, this early, or since this was just Shadows not that long ago. Alrighty, and last but not least, we're into land. Land is another juicy one. This is Manna Confluence. Manna Confluence is going to see play in Dragons. So the same reason that I talked about the Chromatic Lantern, Manna Confluence I think is going to be a shoo-in of all the Dragon decks. If Slivers becomes a thing, there's Slivers. It's probably pretty easy to reprint, but I personally don't see it in Iconic, and possibly in 25. I think 25 is going to try to showcase cards from each set, each time period, but there's just too many to cover that I think that only 1 or 2 cards per set can be actually showcased. And will they go with this one out of Journey to Nyx? Possibly. Lands are tough. Lands are very, very tough in master sets to throw in because they just, yeah. And we saw Seeded Brass in Modern Masters 1. I don't see this one being reprinted until Modern Masters 4. And if Modern Masters 4 should have a multicolored theme, so it definitely will be in Modern Masters 4. So sell off before that, but sink until then. And you can see that the price of Manna Confluence is substantially higher for Card Kingdom. They have a pretty steep buy list at $4.50, meaning they're selling a lot. And so the $6.39 is going to start to, I think in the next year, continue to go up. After this Dragons deck, it should skyrocket up. In fact, it is on my pick for the top 10 cards for the particular Dragon deck to invest in, as I think it is actually my number 1 card in that. But we'll have to wait and see how I adjust it. I think Manna Confluence is just the perfect card right now. If I can trade for this card, 100% for 100%, for other cards they're looking at, I'll take this trade over basically anything at this point. I mean, what card would I... Maybe Cyclonic Rift would I value a little bit higher, card for card. Manna Confluence is just so safe, though. Huge demand, low supply because it's a Journey, so it's a 3rd set. And you can't go wrong with it. So basically, to recap, those are kind of my safe havens. I know this became a kind of long, rambly video, but I'll try to do these every now and again, just kind of switch things up with the Market Monday. But going forward, I am going to try to limit these so we're not having these big 40-minute videos with me going off on tangents, with, more pleasing videos, like visually pleasing videos in the future when I get some focus. You can see that I start to veer off too. It's just, it's hard for me to focus for any given amount of time. So I'm gonna try to it's been a couple weeks. I thought I'd just get better naturally. I think I'm going to go on some antibiotics, see if that helps with the dizziness and just the congestion. And hopefully we'll be back in the swing of things. But we also have some cool things happening at the site. I know I've been saying that forever. We've got Greg working on the website. He should have that up and running, so to where we're able to post deck lists. And we haven't done anything to the website just because I didn't want to put anything on the website just for us to have to scrap it. And as soon as that's done, though, I am going to be pushing out a lot more content and hopefully bringing on some other content producers, hopefully even the market realm. And if you enjoy these type of videos, let me know what you like about the Market Mondays, where you'd like me to focus. If you like more of the top 10 list, or just talking about a specific topic or whatnot in the comment section below. Appreciate everyone sticking with me through these more testing times. Again, we'll be back in the swing of things here in the next few weeks. Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.